Let me cut to the chase. It's surprising that Brazil is not a superpower. Sure, Brazil is a modestly sized power and absolutely Latin America's regional power, but it could have been global. Honestly, Brazil is like a tropical United States. Both isolated New World nations both have an insane amount of territory and a huge amount of farmland. The United States was able to use that position and size to spread its influence to every country on Earth. Brazil? Not so much. It's a bit of a meme that Brazil is the country of the future, and always will be, but never ends up that country. I mean, Brazil has a lot going for it. Great position, huge size, and large labor force. But it is also rife with corruption, relatively poor, and the Earth's murder capital. Where did it go wrong? And will Brazil ever be the country of the future? Brazil's first fatal flaw is what made it in the first place. Its geography. Brazil's geography is big. Like, really big. It has everything. Forest, plains, mountains, rainforest, highlands, and lots of coast. Its first major feature is one you all know, the Amazon. The Amazon rainforest is the largest of its kind in the world. Obviously, it's not ideal to live in. First of all, you can't farm without clearing tons of trees, so you can't eat. And second of all, there are so many bugs in rainforests that you'll probably contract some sort of deadly disease, probably COVID AIDS. This makes a huge chunk of Brazil's territory unsuitable for humans. The river in the Amazon does provide a ton of fresh water though, allowing some small settlements like Manaus and tons of indigenous people groups. The second feature is Brazil's escarpment. It's Great Escarpment. An escarpment is just the cliffs on the edge of a plateau, and these cliffs are long and tall. This makes most of the Brazilian interior essentially an island away from the Brazilian coast. Building roads, tracks, and any sort of paths to get to Brazil's agriculture-producing interior is much more difficult. Not to mention that being in a hot, humid tropical area, building roads and infrastructure is already harder because concrete and cement needs to be dry to set. But the real problem is most people are crowded on the coast, and there's lots of it. Brazil is the longest country from north to south, and without the technology to clear the cliffs, Brazil was basically Chile 2.0. There's a huge divide between the people and the things the people want or need. The escarpment likely stunted Brazilian growth by decades. Then there's the tropical issue. Tropical areas never grow as fast as temperate areas. A, they don't have a winter to freeze bugs and create coordination between people since you had to have a seasonal deadline for crops. And 2, tropical areas always focus on agriculture. It's just too easy to grow food there. So tropical areas always become the breadbasket of the world, but so far haven't really industrialized since so many people are in the agriculture business. That's why Brazil was settled, and it's that settlement that was Brazil's second fatal flaw. The way Brazil was colonized shaped its society to this day. In the early 1500s, the Portuguese started colonizing what we know as Brazil. At the time, there were around 2 million indigenous Brazilians. However, unlike Mesoamerican and the Andean civilizations, there were no cities or infrastructure. The native Brazilians lived in small villages, mostly tribal, and certainly not under one empire. The Portuguese were using Brazil more as a stop in their African and Indian Sea empires and less of a real settlement. Portugal used human trafficking to bring in the settlers of Brazil from anywhere but Portugal. I mean, the Portuguese population was and still is tiny. They could never fit into a continent of people. The first blunder of colonization is just that. While the British sent off their poor to the countryside of America, the Portuguese sent off their rich to oversee productions in small cities. This wealth never left the rich, creating a huge wealth inequality seen to this day, one of the worst on earth. They had fancy estates to live in and yes, lots of money, but how much infrastructure actually gets built with private investment? Almost none. It usually goes to some sort of production to which tons went. Brazil became an agricultural hotspot after the Europeans discovered sugar. It was the perfect climate to grow sugarcane, so like many other colonists, the Portuguese brought in African slaves. Anywhere from 6 to 10 million slaves were imported from West and Southern Africa, about 18 to 30 times more than the USA. It was so important to the colonists that slavery wasn't outlawed until 1888, the last country in the Western world to do so. In addition, even though Pope Paul III made a papal bull declaring that no indigenous person of the Americas was to be enslaved, that didn't stop the Portuguese, or anyone else really. Natives captured by Brazilian banderas were forced to work
Not
in
my
sugar plants
country
or newly
equals
found
bad
gold mines.
batches.
This
Not
insane
my
amount of
country
slavery caused a
equals
whole
bad
plethora.
batches. Not my country equals bad batches. Not my country equals bad batches.
True. Little W.